Hello and welcome to this Price of Job tutorial. In this video we'll be taking a look at the new External Wall Insulation module. To access the new module, first navigate to the module toolbar here at the top and select the Exterior category, and then select External Walls Insulation, and create the module. This module allows us to estimate for a variety of different insulations for exterior walls, including color render, cement render, Drydash, or no render at all. We might choose no render if we'll be adding cladding in a separate module. For this example, let's start with color render and input the area of wall to be insulated. In this case, we'll just say 10 square meters. Then we have options here for either Batten support, which adds a new stage to our sidebar, and preparation, which also adds a new stage to our sidebar. We'll start by taking a look at the Batten supports. We only need to select this if needed, and within the stage here we see that Price of Job automatically calculates the total linear length of Batten supports required, in this case 29 meters. Here we can select the size of battens that we'll be using, in this case 25 by 38 millimeters, and we can select the spacing. If we were to decrease the spacing, then the total linear length would increase. By clicking the three dots, we can access the Batten support settings, and here we can specify whether we want our batten supports to be fixed vertically or horizontally. We'll leave this set at vertical. We can also choose both with cross battens. And for the cross battens, we can either allow Price of Job to automatically calculate the number of horizontal rows required by the spacing measurement, or we can specify an exact number of rows. So for example, if we only wanted 3 rows, we could choose that, and Price of Job automatically calculates the row length in millimeters. For this example, we'll leave this set at by spacing, and we'll also adjust our spacing to 300 millimeters. As we make our adjustments, the sketch here is updating. Let's expand this to full screen so we can have a closer look. And here we can see our battens and cross battens. So again, we'll just change this. We'll set this to 3 rows. And here's our top, middle, and bottom rows of cross battens. And if we were to change this to horizontal, we see how that would look here on the sketch. And if we were to change that to vertical with no cross battens, we can see how that would look. So for this example, we'll leave cross battens selected with an automatic count calculated by our spacing. And then we can choose the type of fixings we wish to use, either nails, screws, or hammer fixings. And we can specify the spacing for those as well. Let's also adjust that to 300 millimeters. And depending on which category of fixings we choose, we can select the drop-down menu here to choose the exact materials we wish to purchase. In the case of hammer fix screws, we can choose either M5 by 50, M6 by 60, M6 by 80, or M8 by 100, or red, yellow, or brown plastic plugs. For our example, we'll choose the M6 by 80 millimeters. And notice as we make our selections, the summary at the bottom has been updating as we go. So a total battens length of 74 meters with 247 fixings required. If we were to increase our spacing, say set that to 400 millimeters, then our fittings would reduce accordingly. And likewise, if we reduce the spacing of our cross battens, let's set that to 400 millimeters, then the total linear length of battens would also be decreased. And lastly, there is a checkbox here for damp-proof course behind the timber battens, and we can select this to help prevent rot of our timber battens. Here we can select the drop-down menu to choose the type of damp-proof course we wish, either 100, 150, 225, 300, or 450 millimeters. In this example, let's select the 225. And then we can close our options window. And here we can see our battens with the DPC added to our sketch. Now, if the wall will require any preparation, we can select this checkbox here, and this opens a new stage for the preparations window. We can select our preparations by clicking the button here. And here we can add preparations, materials, and removal. So we'll start by taking a look at the preparations. And this would include items such as filling holes and cracks, sanding and filling, burning off paint to woodwork, removing paint with chemicals, clean down with wire brush, wet cleaning, pressure wash, smoothing walls, or smoothing ceiling. So for example, perhaps we'll have to fill some holes and cracks and burn off paint to woodwork. And these are added to our list at a default of 1 square meter. So we'll have to adjust this to 10 square meters for our full-size wall, or we can just input that value manually. And these preparations are added to our estimate. And we can view our estimate by closing this sketch pane. And we can see that a stage has been added to our estimate here for both the batten supports and our preparation so far, filling the holes and cracks and burning off paint to woodwork for 10 square meters. Next, let's add some extra materials for our preparation. And for this, we have a variety of categories we can choose from, including sealants, fillers, building chemicals, gloss paints, metal paints, primers and undercoats, self-adhesive rolls, scrim tape, dust sheets, rendering beads, and drywall screws. So let's add some sealants to our materials list here. We might want to add some general purpose silicone, and that adds 1 tube, so we might want to select 3 of those. And then for fillers, we might want to get a bag of joint filler. And for dust sheets, we might want to pick up a couple of these polybacked dust sheets, say maybe 2 or 3 of those, and some rendering beads, maybe an external render stop bead, and we'll pick up 4 of those. And all these materials are added to our estimate here in the preparation stage. Then we can also take a look at the removal options for preparation. And here we have categories for wall finishes, ceiling finishes, concrete demolition, landscaping, plumbing and heating removal, roof, remove floor finishes, walls and chimney, woodwork and openings, and building and outbuildings. So for this wall, maybe we have to remove some plasterboard and old cladding, and we can adjust the area for this to 10 square meters, or just input the value manually. And if we were to add something to this list, maybe we accidentally add some remove linoleum sheeting. If something has been added to our list here accidentally and we no longer need it, we can just remove that by clicking the bin icon here to remove that from our estimate. Now, as we've been adding all of these, PrestaJob has automatically calculated the disposal volume of waste that we'll have, in this case 0.7 cubic meters, for which we would require half of a 2-yard skip. Now, if we'll have other demolition as a part of this project, this 0.5 of a 2-yard skip will be added to our total disposal volume. However, if this is the only disposal that we'll have, we might want to round this up to 1 full skip, since we can't supply only half of a skip. If we wish to have a different size skip, we can choose that from here. Rather than have a skip, we might just want to have some rubble sacks, in which case PrestaJob calculates we would need 35 of those, or a 4-yard skip, or maybe even a tipper lorry. And if we wish to include these materials here within our description, we can select the checkbox here, and all these materials are added here within the automatically written description. For this example, this might be a bit too much information to include here, so we'll just deselect that for now to have a more concise description area. When we're done selecting our preparations, we can close this window. Now, after building these stages for preparation and batten support, if we later decide that we don't need these after all, rather than deselecting here, what we can do is we can simply deselect these stages here to hide these stages from our estimate. And now our calculations are still preserved here in case we need to add them back in later on, but they're not factored into our estimate or calculation. For now, let's select preparation to include that with our estimate, but we won't require batten support because we'll be using adhesive. Next, let's take a look at the insulation stage. Here we have options for rigid insulation or slabs. And again, let's expand our sketch so we can see the difference between these. Here we can see the slab insulation. And here we have rigid boards. With rigid, you have a variety of materials to choose from, including a variety of Jablite or Kingspan boards. And for slabs, you can choose from a variety of rock wool thicknesses. In either case, you can choose your adhesive, either none, if you'll be using anchors, and the sketch updates to show that, adhesive, spray foam, or sealant adhesive. In this case, we'll leave this with straight adhesive, as using adhesive with anchor fixings would be the most common. If you won't be using anchor fixings, you can deselect this, and that's removed from the sketch. And then for the adhesive, we can select the 3 dots here to open our adhesive settings, and we can see the number of anchors per square meter is set at 10. We can choose the insulation anchors here from our drop-down menu. And for the adhesive itself, we can see the coverage of square meters per 25 kilograms is 6 by default, and we can override that. If we'll be needing an extra thick layer, we might want to reduce that a little. Or if we'll be spreading it extra thinly, we might want to increase that. And then we can choose from the drop-down menu our various adhesive materials. If rather than supplying your own insulation, the insulation will be supplied by client, you can select that here. and that is updated here in the description to show that rock wool or similar insulation will be supplied by client. Or if you just prefer to set an allowance, you can do so and set your allowance per square meter. By default, it's set at 12 pounds per square meter. We can override that, say, to 15. Next, we can take a look at the mesh stage here, and we have an option here for either metal lath or fiberglass mesh. And again, we'll expand our sketch pane here and see the difference between the fiberglass mesh and the metal lath. Here we can choose our materials, either reinforcing mesh or metal lath. And then for our mesh option settings, we can select the 3 dots here, and we can see the percentage of overlap, currently set by default as 10. If we want to, we can increase that overlap to 20%, and that will be factored into our estimate. We'll just leave that set at the default of 10 for now. And close this window. And next we can take a look at our through color render. Here we can select the thickness of our render, selected by default as 15 millimeters, and choose from the drop-down menu the render materials we wish to use. If the material we want to use is not represented here in this list, we can use Edit Pack to add a material to the Price of Job library and add that material for our future use. Then we have the 3 dots here to open the render options, and here we can see the coverage render in kilograms per square meter, and adjust that if necessary. If rather than using color render, we're using cement render, then this stage would be replaced with a sand cement render stage here, again where we could choose the thickness and set the cement sand ratio. And for masonry paint, we could choose the number of coats that we wish to apply, along with the paint we wish to use, and set the paint coverage settings for the paint coverage and stabilizing solution. If we were using Drydash, then this stage would be replaced with a Drydash stage where we could choose the thickness and set the sand cement ratio and pebble coverage. So we'll leave this set at color render for this example and move on to the accessory stage. Let's close our sketch pane here, reduce that so we can see our estimate pane. And here we can add some accessories, including external render stop beads. And we can choose from here, we might need some angle beads or corner beads. And however many of these are needed, we can just use the buttons here to increase the quantity. And galvanized steel beads, we can change this, maybe to an angle bead, and change the quantity. And here for the angle bead, we might want to have a bell cast bead, change the quantity. And if we need any lead rolls, we can add those here. And for beads and mesh, we can select this button here to add either plaster beads, rendering beads, building chemicals, tape, filler, sealant, insulation anchors, lead rolls, or screws. And again, just choose the materials that we'll be needing and adjust the quantities as necessary. And all this is added to an accessories stage here at the bottom of our estimate. Our price job also calculates the estimated time in labor to apply these accessories, in this case estimated at 8.7 hours. We can adjust that if necessary. We might want to round that up to 10. And that is factored here in the accessories estimate stage as well for 10 hours of labor. And to see a labor hour summary for this entire project, we can click the icon here for total hours. And we can see that this complete project is estimated to be 84 hours or 10.5 days, with time allocated to all these various tradespeople. And if we're being asked to quote only for the labor if all materials will be supplied, we can go to the filters button here and remove the materials from our estimate, so we're only quoting on the labor, plant, and tool. Or alternatively, if we're being requested to only supply the materials and labor will be subcontracted, we can remove that from the estimate by deselecting labor. And you can also see that Price Shop is rounding all of our materials and labor to the nearest whole number, and we can adjust that here in the filters category by selecting rounding. And if we have a large warehouse, we might just want to use fractional materials. We can deselect that, and then the specific amount of materials are shown here in the estimate. But if this is for a one-off job, we can leave that rounded, and Price Job automatically rounds that up to the nearest whole quantity. And also in this window, we can choose to show our labor in hours, and we see that represented here lower in the stage. And also have options to show or hide our profit on screen, and show or hide prices. And this is handy if we'll be sharing this screen with our client as we build out the estimate. We'll leave this deselected for now and close this options window. When we're done with our estimate, we can go to the Reports tab here. And PriceAjob puts together a quote for us to share with our client. We can choose the title of that quote to either an estimate, a quotation, or a proposal. And we can choose to show total prices, subtotals, stages, and detailed pricing, and show a simple or advanced structure where we can show or hide the description, materials, labor, plant and tool, and other costs, as well as prices and units. When we're done building our estimate, we can print it, download it as a PDF, export it as a Word document, or email it to our client directly from within PriceAjob. And that's how to use the external wall insulation module. Thank you for using PriceAjob.